As we get older, we tend to settle into certain routines. Some of them are comforting, even wise. But there are others that, well, can become blind spots. You might think you're just being yourself, but the reality is the people around you are noticing. And while they might not say anything, these habits can quietly shape how you're seen by family, friends, and even strangers. In this video, we're going to explore 12 behaviors you might be displaying in your later years that everyone notices but no one talks about. And no, I'm not talking about appearance. I'm referring to the subtle actions and attitudes that can gradually diminish your dignity, isolate you from others, and erode the respect you've earned over time. Each of these signs will prompt you to pause and reflect, not to criticize yourself, but to gently ask, is this helping me, or is it pushing people away? The good news is, most of these habits are easy to change. The first step is simply recognizing them. By the end of this video, you'll know what to look out for, and you'll also gain insights into how to carry yourself with more confidence, grace, and clarity as you age. Stick with me until the end. You might just discover that a few small shifts can make a huge impact on how others perceive you, and more importantly, how you feel about yourself. Let's dive in. Number 1, neglecting personal hygiene. One of the first things people notice, but often don't bring up, is when someone starts to neglect their personal hygiene. And no, I'm not talking about major neglect here. It's the little things. Wearing the same clothes for a couple of days in a row, hair that's been untouched, nails that grow just a little too long, a faint odor that lingers after you leave the room. These might seem minor, but they actually speak volumes. You see, hygiene isn't just about staying clean, it's about how we present ourselves to the world. When we're younger, it's easy to maintain these habits without thinking twice. But as we age, energy decreases, routines change, and some start to feel like, why bother? That shift can be subtle, but trust me, the people around you notice. They might not say anything because they don't want to make you feel uncomfortable. Especially younger family members. They're unsure of how to bring it up without feeling like they're stepping on your toes. So instead, they just adjust. They sit further away. They shorten the visit. They might stop initiating hugs. What they're responding to isn't you. It's the message that your self-care is sending. It signals that perhaps you've let go a bit, that you may not value yourself as much as you did before. And here's the tough truth, no one says out loud. When you stop taking care of yourself, others subconsciously stop treating you with the same level of warmth and respect. Now, I'm not saying you need to dress like a runway model or wear cologne every day, but a fresh shirt, brushed hair, and neatly trimmed nails go a long way. They send a message that says, I'm still here. I still care. I still respect myself and you. Here's the real deal. People respond to your energy before they respond to your words. Hygiene is one of the clearest reflections of that energy. When you take care of yourself, it encourages others to treat you with kindness, respect, and closeness. And that's the kind of message you want to be sending. Number 2, speaking without a filter. As we get older, something strange tends to happen. The inner voice that used to say, maybe don't say that out loud, becomes quieter, and sometimes it disappears entirely. You start speaking your mind more openly, maybe even proudly, thinking, I've earned a right to say whatever I want. While that can feel freeing, the people around you often experience something else entirely, discomfort. There's a fine line between honesty and bluntness. And over time, if you find yourself saying things that make people pause, shift uncomfortably, or avoid eye contact, it might be a sign that what's coming out isn't just truth, it's harshness. Maybe you found yourself commenting on someone's appearance, weight, relationships, or how they're raising their kids. Perhaps you brush it off with a joke and say, I'm just being honest, or back in my day, we weren't so sensitive. But here's the truth. Honesty without compassion comes across as criticism. The people you're speaking to probably won't say anything. They'll just pull back. They'll stop inviting you to certain events, or they'll keep phone calls short. They care about you, but they're protecting themselves from the sting of those thoughtless remarks. This doesn't mean you have to filter every word or tread carefully around everyone, but it does mean taking a moment to pause and ask yourself, is this helpful? Is this kind? because sometimes what feels like speaking your truth is just venting frustration, and it can hit harder than you realize. A simple rule: if you wouldn't want someone saying it to your grandchild, maybe don't say it to someone else's. The beauty of getting older is the wisdom you've gained. And when that wisdom is shared with kindness, people listen. They respect you. But when it's wrapped in sarcasm or judgment, they begin to tune out. Even if your intentions are good, your words still carry weight, maybe more than ever. Use them to build connection, not create distance. Number 3, wearing clothes that don't fit anymore. There's a certain comfort in routines. Eating the same breakfast, taking the same walk, wearing the same clothes you've had for years. And there's nothing wrong with that kind of consistency. But when it comes to clothing, what once felt classic can, over time, start to seem a bit careless. You might not notice it yourself, but the way your clothes fit or don't says a lot about how engaged you are with the present. Pants that hang too loose, shirts that are a bit too tight, outdated styles from decades ago, or shoes that have lost their shape. These aren't just fashion choices. They quietly signal that you've stopped paying attention. And while no one will likely call it out, they notice. It's not about trying to keep up with the latest trends or dressing like you're in your 20s. It's about showing the world that you still see yourself as someone worth taking care of. When people see an older adult wearing clothes that fit well, look cared for, and reflect a sense of self-respect, they feel something immediately: admiration. It tells them this person is still present in the world, not out of vanity, but dignity. Think about it. Would you wear the same suit to a job interview that you wore 25 years ago? Probably not. The same idea applies to everyday life. Our bodies change, our skin tones shift, and our energy evolves. Dressing in a way that reflects who you are now, rather than who you were, shows emotional awareness and self-respect. Now, I've heard some say, "What do I care what people think? I'm comfortable." And that's fair. But there's a big difference between being comfortable and being dismissive. You can be comfortable and still put yourself together. You can be relaxed and still show respect for your appearance. A simple update, like a pair of well-fitting jeans or a shirt that complements your natural tones, can change the way people interact with you. Not because of the fabric, but because of what it represents, that you're still engaged, still aware, and still proud of who you are today. People might not compliment you directly. They may not mention it at all, but they notice. They smile a little more. They treat you with a little more reverence because, whether we like it or not, the way we dress is the first thing the world sees. And even in later years, that first impression still matters. Number 4, interrupting or dominating conversations. We all want to be heard, especially as we get older, having lived through enough experiences to feel like we have valuable insights to share. But sometimes, in our eagerness to share what we know or to make sure our point gets across, we forget to leave space for others. It can start off small. You're in a conversation, and someone brings up a topic you're familiar with. You jump in. You share your story. You start offering advice. Before you know it, 10 minutes have passed, and no one else has had a chance to speak. What makes this tricky is that it doesn't come from a bad place. Often, it's driven by a genuine desire to help. But here's the issue. When we take up too much space in a conversation, we unintentionally silence the very people we care about. And they probably won't tell you it's happening. Instead, they'll start pulling back. They'll call less often. They'll keep conversations brief. You'll feel the distance, but you won't always know why it's there. People want to feel seen and heard, not lectured. And when every conversation starts to feel like a one-way street, it slowly weakens the relationship, especially with younger adults or grandchildren who might already feel a bit uncertain about connecting across generational gaps. It's not about saying less. It's about listening more, letting there be pauses, asking more questions than you answer, resisting the urge to offer advice unless it's asked for. One of the most powerful things you can do in a conversation is to hold back just enough to let others fully express themselves. Not because you don't have something valuable to say, but because they need to feel like what they say matters too. Here's the irony. The less you dominate the conversation, the more people will seek your advice. The more you listen, the more they'll trust you. You'll become someone they want to talk to, not someone they feel they need to brace for. So next time you're in a conversation, whether it's in a group or one-on-one, pay attention. Are you really listening, or are you just waiting for your turn to speak? That simple shift in awareness can make all the difference. Because when people feel heard, they open up, they draw closer, and they'll look forward to the next conversation instead of dreading it. Number 5, complaining about kids these days. It often starts as a simple observation. You see a teenager absorb in their phone and think, back in my day, we actually talked face to face. You hear someone in their 30s making a decision you disagree with and think they don't know how tough the real world is. Before you know it, these thoughts begin slipping out in conversations with friends, family, even strangers. What you may not realize is that constantly criticizing younger generations sends a strong, often hurtful message. It tells those around you, especially your children and grandchildren, that you're not interested in understanding them, that you're stuck in a past that no longer exists. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Every generation has felt this way about the one coming up behind them. It's nothing new, but when this criticism becomes your default mode, it doesn't make you seem wise. It makes you come across as bitter. You might intend it as a joke. You might think you're just pointing out the obvious, but to the people hearing it, especially those under 50, it often feels like rejection. It feels like you're dismissing their entire world, their values, their way of life. The result? They stop opening up. They keep things superficial. They avoid deeper conversations because they're preparing for judgment. Even though they love you, they start keeping parts of themselves at a distance. Now, that doesn't mean you have to agree with everything younger people do. It doesn't mean you have to embrace every new trend or idea. But it does mean choosing curiosity over criticism, asking instead of assuming. When you shift from saying, "These kids today have it easy," to asking, "What's it like to find your way in today's world?" you open the door to real connection. You create space for dialogue, not division. Remember, your value doesn't come from comparing the past to the present. It comes from bridging them, from being the steady hand that reaches across generations, not the voice that shouts from behind. And believe it or not, when younger people feel respected by you, they listen more. They ask questions. They come to you, not because they have to, but because they want to. You become more than just the elder in the room. You become the person they admire, trust, and turn to, not for lectures, but for wisdom that listens first and speaks second. That's real influence. And it starts with letting go of the need to be right about the past and leaning into who you can be right now. Number 6, ignoring modern etiquette. There's a certain social awareness that often goes unnoticed until it's not there. Things like speaking loudly on your phone in public, standing too close in line, or playing a video without headphones in a waiting room. Small behaviors, sure, but they can significantly affect how others perceive you. Now, these things might not have been a big deal decades ago. Back then, people were more tolerant of loud conversations or unexpected behaviors. But times change, and so do expectations. What once seemed harmless now quietly makes people uncomfortable. And here's the tricky part. You may not even realize you're doing it. No one's going to pull you aside and say, "Hey, could you turn that down?" Or mind stepping back a little. Instead, they'll give you a look, avoid eye contact, or move to another seat. It's not personal, but it's real. Whether it's on the subway, in a coffee shop, or just walking through a store, these small breaches of what people now consider common courtesy send a message. I'm not aware of how I affect others. And the reality is, people don't always give older adults the benefit of the doubt. They often assume you should know better. So, when they see these behaviors, they don't chalk it up to misunderstanding, they chalk it up to disregard. That's not the legacy you want to leave. The good news? It's one of the easiest things to fix. Start noticing how people around you behave in public spaces. Pay attention to their volume, how they manage personal space, and how they engage with technology when others are present. Modern etiquette isn't about being uptight. It's about being considerate. It shows that you're still tuned into the world, still engaged, still aware of the impact you have on others. And that awareness? It builds respect. It tells people, I may be older, but I'm still someone who pays attention, someone who adapts, someone who cares about how others feel. That doesn't just improve how strangers respond to you. It also changes how your own family sees you. Grandkids notice. Neighbors notice. Their quiet admiration grows. Because in a world that's always rushing, someone who moves with awareness and carries themselves with subtle dignity stands out more than ever. Number 7. Oversharing medical problems. We've all heard the joke, get a group of older folks together, and the conversation inevitably turns into a competition of who has the worst knee, the highest blood pressure, or the most medications lined up on the bathroom shelf. While it may seem like harmless talk, or even a way to relate, it can start to wear down the energy of those around you. Here's the thing. Everyone knows that aging comes with its fair share of physical challenges. You don't have to pretend everything is perfect. But when your conversations constantly revolve around what hurts, what the doctor said, or what's next on the surgery schedule, people start to feel like they're in a waiting room, not a relationship. Especially for younger family members, these topics can feel overwhelming. They may not know how to respond, or worse, they may feel helpless, listening to things they can't fix. So instead of leaning in, they back away, not out of disrespect, but out of quiet exhaustion. You deserve empathy, of course. You deserve to be heard. But when health becomes the centerpiece of every interaction, the dynamic shifts. It goes from connection to caretaking, from conversation to complaint. Think about the people you enjoy being around. Chances are they're not the ones listing every ache and pill they take. They're the ones who focus on what's still good. The ones who might mention a challenge, but don't let it define the entire moment. Now, does that mean you should hide your struggles? Not at all. But it's important to choose your audience, choose your timing, and, most importantly, choose balance. Share how you're doing, yes, but also take the time to ask others how they're doing. Talk about the book you're reading, the neighbor's garden, or the bird you saw outside your window. Because your life is still filled with stories that aren't just medical charts. People want to connect with you, not just your symptoms. You might be surprised by how much lighter your relationships feel when you stop letting your health lead every conversation. When you focus on what you can do, what you enjoy doing, and what still brings you joy, you don't just feel better. You help others feel better too. In a world that often feels heavy, being someone who lifts the room, even just a little, is a kind of medicine all its own. Number 8, being stubborn about outdated beliefs. One of the hardest things to recognize in ourselves, especially as we age, is when our beliefs shift from being windows into the world to becoming walls that block new perspectives. We hold on to ideas that once served us well, principles that shaped how we raised our families, ran our businesses, and made sense of the world. But over time, if we're not careful, those beliefs can harden into absolutes that no longer reflect the society we live in today. You might find yourself saying things like, "That's just the way it is," or "People are too sensitive these days," or even, "I don't care what the science says, I know what's right." And while you may feel confident in your views, what others often hear is something very different: resistance. The reality is the world has changed, and it continues to change. Technology, culture, gender roles, mental health awareness, the way we communicate, everything is evolving fast. When we refuse to even consider another perspective, it doesn't come across as wisdom. It comes across as unwillingness. Younger generations notice this, and while they likely won't confront you directly, they quietly label you as someone they can't talk to about certain things, someone who doesn't want to understand. And that's a real loss, because whether it's your grandchild questioning traditional careers or your neighbor embracing a lifestyle you don't fully understand, there's so much connection possible when curiosity replaces judgment. Staying open to new ideas doesn't mean abandoning your values. It simply means you're willing to update your understanding without compromising who you are. It's about making room at the table for fresh perspectives, even if you don't agree with every single one of them. Here's the truth. Stubbornness often hides fear. Fear of losing relevance, fear of being left behind, and fear that if we let go of old beliefs, we'll lose a piece of ourselves. But the reality is, your relevance doesn't come from how tightly you hold on to the past. It comes from how courageously you engage with the present. When you can say, "I never thought of it that way," or "Tell me more about what that means to you," you open doors for connection, and people feel safe to walk through them. And here's the beautiful part. Sometimes you might change your mind. Sometimes The younger person you're listening to may turn out to be right in ways you hadn't imagined. That humility, that willingness to learn, that's what makes people truly admire you. Not because you had all the answers, but because you remained a student of life, even in old age. And that's rare. That's powerful. Number 9, walking or moving without awareness of space. As we age, our pace naturally slows down. We might feel less steady or more cautious with our steps, and that's completely normal. But what often happens without us realizing it is that we become less aware of how our movements affect the people around us. You've probably seen it. Someone standing in the middle of a grocery aisle, cart sideways, completely blocking the way while they're scanning a label. Or someone stopping suddenly in a busy walkway, lost in thought, or walking with a friend and slowly drifting into the path of oncoming foot traffic. Most of the time, these actions aren't intentional. You're not trying to be inconsiderate. You're simply focused on your task. But to the people around you, especially those in a hurry or navigating tight spaces, it can feel like friction, like you're creating small obstacles that make their day a little harder. And here's the key part. People rarely say anything. They decide, walk around you, maybe give a quick glance and move on. But over time, these small moments add up in how others perceive you. They might start to see you as the person who's always in the way, or they may silently decide to avoid situations where they'd have to walk beside you, shop with you, or navigate public spaces together. Not because they don't like you, but because they feel like they have to manage you. Now, I want to be clear, slowing down isn't the issue. The problem is awareness. You can move slowly and still be respectful of space. You can pause to read something and still keep to one side. You can walk carefully while being mindful of the flow around you. This is especially important in places like airports, busy sidewalks, malls, or even church hallways. These are shared spaces, and being considerate in them sends a strong message that you're still paying attention, that you still care about how you impact others. In fact, this kind of awareness is a subtle form of grace. It tells people you're not just focused inward, but you're present, thoughtful, and kind. And the truth is, most people aren't expecting perfection. They're just hoping for a little effort, a little awareness, a little consideration. When you show that, you stand out, not as a slower person, but as a considerate one, someone who still moves through the world with dignity and a quiet sense of responsibility. And that kind of presence is more powerful than you might realize. Number 10, making jokes that don't age well. A good sense of humor is one of the best things you can carry into old age. It keeps you light, keeps others comfortable, and helps ease tension, even in the hardest moments. But not all humor ages gracefully. Some jokes, especially the ones that once got a laugh decades ago, can quietly push people away today. You might be joking the way you always have, a little sarcasm here, a teasing remark there, maybe a comment that plays off old stereotypes or pokes fun at someone's background, appearance, or choices. You might even laugh as you say it and follow up with, "I'm just messing with you," or "Come on, lighten up." But here's what's changed: the world around you. While humor used to rely on poking fun at differences, today people are far more sensitive to how words land, especially when they come from someone older. Younger folks, especially, are navigating a culture that emphasizes inclusion, empathy, and respect for diverse experiences. When a joke feels out of step with those values, it doesn't come across as funny. It comes across as disconnected or worse, disrespectful. And they probably won't tell you. They'll just laugh politely, then avoid getting too close. You'll feel the distance, but may not understand where it came from. Now, that doesn't mean you have to walk on eggshells. It doesn't mean humor is off limits. But it does mean thinking twice before you default to certain kinds of jokes. Ask yourself, is this funny because it's clever or because it puts someone else down? The best kind of humor, especially in older age, is the kind that lifts people up, that brings lightness, not discomfort, and that shows you're not stuck in the past, but evolving right along with everyone else. In fact, nothing builds connection faster than being able to laugh at yourself. It shows humility, perspective, and that you're not trying to prove anything. You're just here to enjoy the moment with others. When people see that, they relax. They engage. They start seeing you not just as the older person in the room, but as someone who still gets it. A kind sense of humor will take you far, but humor that's thoughtful, self-aware, and a little updated for today. That'll keep the door to connection wide open at any age. Number 11, acting helpless when you're not. Getting older brings real challenges. No one's denying that. There are things that used to come easy that now take more time, more care, sometimes more help. But there's a difference between needing help and defaulting to it when you don't have to. And over time, that difference becomes something people notice more than they'll ever admit. Maybe you've gotten used to saying, "Can you just do it for me?" Or, "I don't know how any of this works. I'll mess it up anyway." At first, those requests feel innocent. But when they become habits, especially for things you're still capable of doing, they can quietly start to wear on the people around you. Family members might start feeling like caretakers, even when you're perfectly able. Friends may notice that they're always the ones lifting, reaching, fixing, or organizing. And though they might smile and say, "No problem," inside, they begin to feel something else: resentment. What's even more complex is that sometimes this behavior is subconscious. It's not laziness. It's fear. Fear of doing it wrong. Fear of looking silly. Fear of not keeping up. So you let someone else step in. And with each little surrender, your independence slips just a bit more. But here's the truth. People admire effort more than perfection. They'd rather see you try and struggle a little than give up altogether. Your children, your grandchildren, even your neighbors, they feel proud when you show you're still in the game, that you still want to learn, move, and participate. And when you ask for help only when you truly need it, they trust you more. They don't feel like they're being manipulated or taken for granted. They feel honored to step in because they know it comes from a place of honesty, not habit. Maintaining your sense of agency isn't about pretending you're 30 again. It's about showing up with what you can do, asking clearly for what you can't, and respecting the line between the two. You'd be amazed how empowered you feel when you start reclaiming the little things, carrying your own bag, figuring out the new remote, following a recipe without asking someone to hover. These small wins build confidence. They remind you and everyone around you that age may change what you're capable of, but it doesn't take away your strength, your will, or your dignity. Because the people who truly age, well, aren't the ones who never ask for help. They're the ones who know when to ask and when to stand tall and say, "I've got this." Number 12, pretending you're always right. We all like to feel we've earned our place at the table, especially after decades of life experience, hard choices, and lessons learned the long way. So it's understandable that, at a certain point, many older adults feel like they've got the answers, that they've seen enough to know how things work. And in many cases, they do. But here's where it gets tricky. When the need to be right overshadows the need to connect, people stop listening. It might show up in small ways. Correcting someone's story at dinner, insisting your way of doing something is the only way that makes sense, rolling your eyes at new ideas, or brushing off someone else's opinion with, "Trust me, I know better." At first, others may shrug it off. They might even laugh. But over time, being around someone who always has to be right becomes exhausting. People start avoiding meaningful conversations. They withhold their thoughts. They stop challenging you, not because you convince them, but because it's just easier to stay quiet. The irony is, many older folks don't do this to be arrogant. They do it to feel safe, to feel like they still have authority in a world that's changing quickly around them. But when being right becomes more important than being kind or curious, it backfires. Being wise doesn't mean having all the answers. It means knowing when to offer your perspective and when to let someone else explore theirs. It means holding your opinions with confidence, but also with openness. Because here's the truth, most people don't say out loud. The people we admire most aren't the ones who correct us. They're the ones who listen, reflect, and gently invite us to think differently without forcing it. When you stop trying to win every discussion, people actually start coming to you more. They ask your opinion. They value your feedback. Not because you dominate the room, but because your words carry calm, thoughtful weight. And when you do speak, because you don't speak just to win, your voice lands deeper. It sticks. It matters. In the end, the need to be right fades. What lasts is how you made people feel. And when you leave space for others to be heard, challenged, and uplifted, your presence becomes something they truly treasure, not tolerate. Final thoughts. Now that we've gone through these 12 behaviors, take a moment to reflect gently, without judgment. Which of these habits have quietly crept into your daily life? Which ones caught you by surprise? And which do you feel ready to shift, even if just a little? This video wasn't meant to shame or criticize. It was created to give you something most people don't. Honest insight wrapped in care. Because the truth is, these behaviors don't make you a bad person. They're simply blind spots, things that settle in over time without us noticing. And once we do notice, that's when real strength shows. Not in pretending they don't exist, but in saying, I see it. I can do better. I still have the power to grow. That's what aging well is really about. Not clinging to the past, not resisting change, but stepping into each new day with self-awareness, grace, and the quiet strength of someone who still wants to connect, evolve, and be a source of warmth in other people's lives. So as you move forward, keep these signs in mind, not as a checklist, but as gentle reminders, ways to keep showing up in the world with dignity, presence, and the kind of character that leaves others feeling respected, comfortable, and inspired. And remember, it's never too late to shift how you move through the world. Small changes in how you speak, listen, dress, joke, or interact can completely transform how people experience you and how you experience your own place in the world. Thank you for joining us today. We'd love to hear from you. Leave a comment below and share one thing you learned today and how you plan to use in your life. Your thoughts are important to us, so don't hesitate to share them. Reading your comments gives us great motivation and encouragement. If you enjoyed this video and found it helpful, please like, subscribe, and share. Your support helps us continue creating good content to inform and inspire you. Thanks for watching, and we look forward to seeing you in the next video.